I'll mute myself as well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final talk today for our keynote. My name is Chad Toprak. I'm the director of Freeplay, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Freeplay hosts and broadcasts from the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, where stories have been shared and games have been played since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and to anyone watching who has a connection to the world's oldest living culture. Sovereignty was never ceded, and the violence of the colonial project is still ongoing. So this next session is really exciting. I think it's something that is very dear to me, and it's titled How to Build a Games Community for Everyone Else. And joining us today is Brendan Keogh and Erika Verkaaik. Brendan Keogh is a researcher at Queensland University of Technology in the Digital Media Research Centre and the co-organiser of the Squiggly River Game Collective. He's been active in the Australian game making community for over a decade as a critic, educator, researcher, and amateur game maker. He's the author of A Play of Bodies, How We Can Perceive Video Games, Killing is Harmless, and the Unity Game Engine and the Circuits of Cultural Software. Erika Verkaaik is an award-winning game designer. They dabble in both digital and analog games and like to make games about connection, exploration, and discovery. They are passionate about small, alternative games and the communities that make them. In their spare time, they organize and run a local game dev meetup called Squiggly River. They're also on the board for Making Space. Please make Brendan and Erika welcome, and I'll hand it over to them.
Great. Thanks, Chad. Hi, everyone on YouTube and in the zone and everywhere else. So yeah, as Chad said, today we're going to talk about how to build a games community for everyone else. So let's just jump into it. And firstly, we also would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people as the First Nation owners of the lands where Squiggly River Game Collective meets up here in Brisbane. We pay respects to their elders, laws, customs, and creation spirits as well. And we also acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded. So, hello, I'm Brendan Keogh. And
hello, I am Erika Verkaaik, and we are both co-organisers of the Squiggly River Games Collective, which is a Brisbane-based game maker community that runs monthly meetups. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Squiggly River and some other things as well. So while Brisbane has long had a vibrant and friendly video game industry, there wasn't a clear space or community for those game makers that were maybe more interested in informal, creative experimentation rather than commercial products. Since forming Squiggly River in 2017, it's become an alternative home for Brisbane's hobbyist, amateur, and experimental game makers. And in the years since, it's grown into a diverse and inclusive community of games, playful art things, and the people who make and play them. So we meet monthly at the Queensland State Library to chat and check out each other's work and give advice and feedback. We try to keep it very low-key and informal, and it's very explicitly not a networking event, but rather a place for hobbyists, enthusiasts, amateurs, etc., to show off any weird things that you might be working on, whether that's complete games, weird prototypes, works in progress, or just ideas. Next slide. Being in Brisbane, we often hear people complain about the idea that there's no local art game scene or no alternative game scene, that everyone cool is moving to Melbourne, etc. But actually, it's quite easy to build your own community. So in this talk, we're going to be covering how Squiggly River got started, how we've grown and changed, and also finish with some thoughts about the future of Squiggly River and also how you can do all of this yourself. So I'll throw to Brendan for a bit of the history of Squiggly River.
great. Thanks, Erika. So yeah, so back in like, when was it, like early 2017, I was teaching at SAE, what's it called, Creative Media Institute here in Brisbane. Myself and my colleague, Adrian Forrest, who was also teaching there, were both feeling like there was kind of a gap in Brisbane. Brisbane has this really great, vibrant industry. It's really friendly. They have lots of great meetups, usually at a bar, there's game jams, all sorts of things. But we felt like there was for ourselves as kind of amateur hobbyist game makers and those students of ours doing weird experimental stuff, that there wasn't really anywhere they could just go and, you know, talk about their craft or just say, hey, here's this weird twine game I made, without someone saying, oh, cool, who's the target audience for that? Or how are you going to put that on Steam? Like, there just wasn't anywhere just to have that chat. And in addition to that, there was this sense that just all the cool stuff just kept happening in Melbourne. And there was one point I remember really clearly in early 2017, we were both in the staff room and something got announced in Melbourne. I forget what it was exactly. It was another Freeplay event or another Contours or another Hover Garden, just something else cool was happening. And I remember Adrian turning around to me really just kind of frustrated, being like, why does all this cool stuff only happen in Melbourne? And then he asked me sincerely, not even as a rhetorical question, how did they get started? And the reason he was asking me that was because I lived in Melbourne from about 2012 to early 2015, when which was a very, very exciting time for games in Melbourne. A lot of stuff was kind of starting out then. And so I had to think about it, like, well, actually, seriously, what was happening back then? And was thinking about all these communities that at the time in the early 2010s, but also later on, it felt like a really big deal, not just in Melbourne, but I think to people around Australia as well. There was Glitchmark, there was Hover Garden, there was the all-day breakfast kind of co-working community. There was just all these communities and events and spaces that from the outside looked really big, really formal, and really, I guess, cutting edge and vibrant and exciting. But then I thought about it a bit more and thought about my time in Melbourne and realized how much of this stuff just started really, really informally and grassroots. The very first Hover Garden event, which if you scroll back far enough on Facebook, you can find, was just like a picnic in a park and some people hung out having a picnic. I remember going to Glitchmark events, which were just people hanging out on their laptops in a unlocked room at RMIT where it was easy to get access to and stuff like that. And so we were like, right, well, we could do that. We could just book out a room at the library and just tell people to come along and we'll talk about game design and that maybe that will work. And so that's what we did. We booked out a room at The Edge, which is part of the State Library of Queensland at South Bank. They have these amazing booths, which you can see in this picture, those windows, just looking out over the Brisbane River. They're free. If you have a library card, you just book it out. They have a projector. They have a bunch of chairs. There's a cafe in there. And we're like, Saturday afternoon, just come along, hang out, show us your games. We told some students about it, not all the students, just for ones we thought were particularly interested in, you know, the more experimental side of games, ones who wanted to talk about Twine with people, not the ones who, you know, were just really excited about their new Unreal shooter they just made, who already had other meetups they could go to in Brisbane. We made a Facebook event. We had a theme. So I'm getting my tabs mixed up. Yeah, we set a theme just so people could like make something if they wanted, but we stressed you don't have to. If you just want to come along, that's fine. And people showed up. Like, I can't remember how many, but probably like 5 or 6. And we kept coming back every month. Sometimes we'd get more people, sometimes less people. Very excitingly, we would get people neither of us knew that weren't our students, that just somehow heard about Squiggly River and started coming along. Where is my cursor? Cool. Yeah, and we started running some events, which was cool. We were at Neverworld. Where's one of my pictures? Cool. We were running events at Neverworld, which is a bar here in Brisbane, you know, of just, hey, here are some games made by our community. And that was cool. And it just started growing, and it was just exciting that just by hanging out of a library once a month, we were starting to meet all these people in Brisbane making cool stuff we didn't know about. But at the same time, we also had some challenges in that it was very, very inconsistent. Some months I would rock up to The Edge and no one would arrive. And there was no way, I guess you could RSVP on the Facebook event, but like it was just really inconsistent turnouts. And we found out, we were talking to people and found out they just weren't coming because they hadn't made a game since the previous meetup. So they're like, well, I have nothing to show, so I shouldn't come. And especially with having themes, we were essentially encouraging people to be productive. And when they weren't productive, they felt like it wasn't for them. Sometimes, like in this picture, we just ended up playing games, I guess ironically, by people down in Melbourne. I think this is Sam Crisp's game for Bar SK Jam. And then, yeah, Adrian and I were just really busy, and we just struggled to stabilize, not even grow, but stabilize Squiggly River into some kind of consistent community, which is a convenient moment to hand it back over to Erika.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll be quickly covering the evolution of Squiggly River. So yeah, around that time, Squiggly had sort of stalled. People were starting to move away from Facebook in general, and the Twitter at the time really wasn't being used consistently enough. Like, I don't think the event details were going onto the Twitter, so you really had to check that Facebook. I had been regularly attending the meetups, and I'd started to notice this. So around the beginning of 2018, I just took over the social media as I asked if I could help organize the meetups, took over the social media, and sort of took it from there. And yeah, in April of 2018, we set up the Discord. Again, this was mostly just because me personally and a lot of other people we were talking to just wanted to get off Facebook. So we set up the Discord instead. At the time, we had both a public Facebook page and a private group, and it was getting really confusing with how the information was sort of shared between them, and none of us were doing a good job of sharing the event info efficiently to both of them, so people were getting lost in between. So yeah, the Discord was set up to sort of fix this issue, and we found that the Discord really allowed for better discussion pretty much straight away. People were less intimidated to post things. There was now actual discussion happening between the meetups as well, which again, compared to the Facebook where you have that one feed to post onto, it can feel really intimidating if you feel like, oh, this isn't good enough to post to the one thing that everyone has to see. So yeah, we found that the specific channels, you can see some of them on the side there, allowed for simultaneous discussions and conversations to start happening and made it a much easier space for new people to jump in. There was now a place and a supportive community that would celebrate small achievements, work in progresses, and experiments, and also a space for people to give advice or feedback. You could, say, hey, I'm halfway done with this build. Can I get someone to playtest this level? This Discord also ultimately allowed us to stay alive during 2020, as everything got shut down, and it sort of helped us to stay afloat. So yeah, from this point, that was sort of mid-2018, we started to grow and we found that we were getting more and more new people showing up and more people attending regularly as well. This allowed us to start doing other things. So we ran a couple of game jams that ended in like more social events at Netherworld, which was that arcade bar that we talked about before. And we even had like a lovely end of year picnic a couple of years ago, though that's been a little bit cursed and we've not been able to set up a new one since. So yeah, one of the things that we noticed was that that we started to get a more and more diverse group of people showing up. We'd always aimed to be a very inclusive space, especially for those who were on the fringes of game development and for those who maybe didn't feel so welcome at the more industry-focused meetups. It's why our name and tagline is what it is. We are Squiggly River, a place for games, playful art things, and the people who make and play them. By making ourselves open to everyone, but purposely inclusive through our wording, we've ended up with a really interesting group of people who are making a really interesting, cool, wide range of things. So currently, we're getting about 15 people or more than 15 people per meetup, not always the same people, which is really exciting. Our Discord has about 140 people in it, but it's not super overwhelming either, which is a nice balance. And we're really happy where things are at for Squiggly River. We feel like it's grown a lot over the last couple of years. We're really proud of where it's at as well. So that's sort of a bit of the history and the evolution, and we can have a look at the takeaways that we wanted to cover, and I'll throw to Brendan for our first takeaway.
Great, thanks, Erika. Yeah, so we essentially just wanted to talk about like, what have we learned from this and what can you I guess take away from this to do something similar wherever you are as well. And of the two main ones, there's two of these, and the first one is essentially that we think it's important to have multiple communities, which partly I think speaks for itself, but that's just me talking while I try to get my slides changed so I can see what I'm meant to say. But essentially, like, not all game groups are the same. And what was really exciting about Melbourne in the early 2010s when I was down there was it felt like there wasn't just a single Melbourne game scene, but that there was a whole bunch of different games scenes going on in Melbourne, plural, with very different goals, with very different ambitions, different aesthetic values. You know, there's the arcade, but then there's also Glitchmark, then there's also All Day Breakfast, there's, you know, what's going on at RMIT, there was what was going on at Swinburne. And if you think about it, say, I always like to use music analogies for game communities. It makes sense that in the same city, there would be a heavy metal music scene and a jazz music scene, and that maybe those groups don't always hang out together, right? That not every music community or every music event has to get all the heavy metal thrash heads and all the jazz musicians and all the hip hop artists all in the one room talking, because they care about different things, even as they're all musicians. And so we pretty firmly believe, well, I firmly believe at least, that's the same for games, right? Especially as games becomes more, I guess, mature, more diverse. There's very different sides of it. And so in Brisbane, the industry side was very well catered for. If you were interested in doing games as your job, there was a community for that. And we really want to stress, we're not saying, the Brisbane games community is very inclusive. There's a really wonderful community here. There's a wonderful industry here. And the spaces like Big Dev and whatnot that do exist here, if a hobbyist or an artist or a student rocked up, they would absolutely be made to feel welcome. But those hobbyists and artists might not be going in the first place because they rightly understand that's not what that event is primarily trying to cater to. And so that's the gap we wanted to fill. We wanted to say, if you just showed up, opened the Unity editor, press play to watch a capsule go around in your weird prototype idea, way before you would show anyone you hope would employ you one day, that's kind of a community we provided. Or if you just had a weird bitsy thing, or just, you know, scribbled on some cards for a paper prototype, that's what we were for. Yeah, and it worked. We started getting these people who had never interacted with the Brisbane games community in any way, who heard about us through a friend or via their teachers, or they saw our online events or our Twitter, and they started coming along despite never having gone to any other Brisbane event before. So I think that really showed that we were successful there. And so essentially you need more communities that overlap with each other, that each have their own goals, but which are also have an open door if people from the other communities also want to, you know, rock up and be part of that. And essentially, I think to have an inclusive games community, that doesn't mean one group catering for everyone equally, but everyone feeling like they each have a home somewhere and can also move between those. And so we became inclusive by catering to the people we didn't think have a home yet. And if industry people want to come along, they're more than welcome. They have come along before, and that's cool too, but we very much have a target, and that's something you can also think about. Just because there's a games community in your town, in your city, that doesn't mean there can't be another one if you don't feel like that community caters you and your friends where you think it should. Back to you, Erika.
Yeah, so moving on to our second sort of major takeaway is that you can just do it yourself. Particularly if you're feeling like the communities around you aren't matching what you are making or your friends are making, then you can just make yourself a new community. Don't feel like you can't start something new because there's already a game dev scene or community or something else happening there. You likely won't be stepping on anyone's toes if you're making something new. So instead of waiting for someone else to do it, just set one up yourself. The main bit we want to cover here is that it's surprisingly easy to start a community. You ultimately just need someone to start it off and make it seem like they're organizing things and make it seem like this is a legitimate meetup. You'll be surprised about how many other people waiting for this sort of community to appear and that will start coming along. Every games community in the world probably has that one person or two people that books the room, books the venue, and then just copy and paste the event info into the Discord, the Twitter, the Facebook, etc. And you can absolutely be that person. The main thing is just giving people a place and a time to show up, and showing up yourself, sharing your own work, being there consistently. If you're there consistently, if people organizing it are there consistently, that it starts to feel like a real thing. You can share pictures and write about it after the fact, tell more people about it, make yourself a bad logo. We've never updated our logo, but make yourself seem a little bit more legitimate. And if you stick with it, you'll start to notice that it begins to snowball. For us, we've found that word of mouth is surprisingly effective. I think we've had more people show up because they're roommate's cousin once heard about Squiggly River, and then they've started to show up from that rather than, formally through the Twitter or something like that. And we've even had people start showing up after they've walked past our table at the edge and been like, what are you all doing with these laptops? And then we get into discussing that. So stick with it, you'll start to notice that it grows from there. Once you have a bit of a community going, you can start outsourcing and crowdsourcing from them to help. It doesn't always have to fall to the one person organizing it. The way that I became a co-organizer was just because I asked if I could, and it sort of like took over from there. And your community is going to tell you what they want. They're going to tell you what type of meetups they like, or what type of events they want to do, what type of places they want to be at. So you can listen to them and draw upon them to know, to grow it further. The main thing is to know what you are. Knowing what you want to be as a community will help to shape the community and create the space that you were looking for. For us, Squiggly River was always going to be a space that included hobbyists, amateurs, and people who were sort of on the fringes of game dev or did game dev on the side. And this really helped to influence where and when and how we held the meetups, the types of events we ran, how we ran the Discord, and all of that. For us, we do middle of the day meetups at a library or picnics at the park. There's no alcohol, it's not during the work week, there's no need to spend money, and there's space to work on your projects with Wi-Fi and all of that. For events, we did some Pride Month game jams and some social meetups at like an all ages arcade bar. All of this sort of helps sets the tone of the community, and it helps to reach the people that you're aiming to reach. Last thing to consider when you're starting to set things up is just to have a clear code of conduct. This is a little bit more boring, but with any public facing event and space, you want to have a code of conduct in place. It helps sets the precedent for the space. It helps you seem a little bit more legitimate, serious as well. But most importantly, it gives you something to point at in the rare event that someone does step out of line for the community. So yeah, those are sort of our general tips and tricks for setting up your own community. I'll throw to Brendan for moving forward. What are we thinking about for the future of Squiggly River?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Erika. Yeah, and as part of moving forward, I think I just want to stress as well that Erika's very modest about this, but like I don't think Squiggly River would still exist if Erika hadn't come on board to help us out with it. I didn't say that in our practice run, but because you would have told me not to say it. But Erika coming, and it's just an important point of like the community stepping up to keep the community running is that's why we can even think about the future, essentially. Yeah. So look, we're now at that point where like we have stabilized, it is sustainable. If neither Erika or I could rock up for a monthly meetup, it would run itself fine. It would do that, which is awesome. And so yeah, we do want to think about how can we maybe now start growing this and become more formal in different ways. So we want to do some more events. We're thinking about maybe different kinds of game jams we can do. Maybe start running some workshops, because we've realized there's all kinds of different knowledge within our community, different game engines, different musical tools, different platforms, people who have released commercial games on Steam, who could maybe pass that knowledge on to other people in the community. And so we're thinking about, can we run some workshops to do that stuff? Can we run some exhibitions and just, have that more public facing, come and play these cool games that are being made right here in Brisbane, especially for those people who lament nothing cool is happening here, which is very much not the case, and probably isn't actually the case anywhere if you have some way to find out what's going on. And yeah, getting some money would be nice. So if you have some money you want to give us, by all means, please do that. And yeah, I don't know, what else are we thinking about doing in the future, Erika? Have I missed anything?
I think that's pretty much it.
That's
all
it?
of those things and more, maybe.
Sweet,
But
watch
yeah.
this space. And yeah, and if you're in Brisbane and you want to join us, please hunt us out and come say hi. Don't really know how to conclude this, but I think that's essentially all we had to say on it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was just going to say thank you so much for listening to the talk. Yeah, again, if you want to find us or if you want to start showing up to Squiggly meetups or join the Discord, all of that information you can find through our Twitter or the very newly updated website. So yeah, you can find those things. Please join. We're very friendly, I promise. So looks like we've got about 5 minutes left. So we'd love to do a bit of a Q&A. I've got the YouTube open, so if you have any questions for us, as the mod has just said there, just chuck them into the YouTube chat. I know it's a little bit out of sync, but we'll just start answering those. I don't know how to fill the time before the YouTube catches up. Or if there's no questions, that's also fine.
What's your favorite Squiggly River game, Erika?
That's really putting me on the spot. What's yours? Tell me yours first.
Damn it. I don't know. I just wanted to give us an opportunity to claim credit for web. That's all I was going for.
What's been the most challenging with starting up Squiggly River? I wasn't there in the very beginning, so Brendan, if you've got any beginning ones, I've got some other challenges that we've faced.
Yeah, I mean, starting up was really just getting that regular community who actually wanted to come all the time. And the biggest hurdle was really people feeling like it wasn't for them if they hadn't made something like that. That was a really hard one to overcome. Like we'd see students or just people we knew who had been before on the Facebook group at that point or on Twitter and be like, hey, why haven't you been for a while? And they're like, oh, I just haven't made anything yet. And it's like, the people who have made something, you know, need people to come to play their games. So like just trying to get a sense of community where it was okay if you were a maker but had not yet made something. Just trying to get that vibe there was a long challenge. And I think now we're finally in a place where that's been successful. And
yeah, definitely. And I think you know, I pretty much show up every time not having made anything because I'm a bit busy at the moment. And I think that, you know, I always say that to people, oh, I never show up with anything. So just show up, chat to people, have, you know, hang out and stuff like that. In terms of recent challenges, we've obviously, 2020 has shut down everything. We had to sort of move online, but more specifically, the edge is still kind of restricting in size. So we're actually kind of hanging out in front of the edge or, you know, under the State Library at the moment. So our current challenge is we don't really have a place for our meetups.
Yeah, the lack of PowerPoints has been an issue there.
It's been annoying,
yep.
But it still works out there. With some other questions, where does the name Squiggly River come from?
It's just there's like the Brisbane River. It's just a squiggly river. And we just wanted something that sounded playful without calling it like hardcore level up game on Brisbane or something. You know, like we just wanted something that sounded playful, sounded just playful, sounded like Brisbane without just calling it, you know, Brisbane indie game developers was already taken. So that was just a fun Brisbane-y name, we thought.
Yeah, I think that's probably the cool. Terry has asked, have you ever thought about bringing Squiggly River to Melbourne? There was also a question if we know about any Sydney-based events that might be similar.
In Sydney?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the main community I know of in Sydney, other people might be answering this in chat better than I can, but like Beer and Pixels is a pretty large, pretty common community in Sydney. I don't know the names of others, but I know there are people who are very community conscious, such as, you know, including Jay, who, you know, has helped build the beautiful zone you're all using this week. So I would ask Jay in the zone what communities are in Sydney. I think they would have a good idea of that.
Cool. Is Screen Queensland aware of this game's community? I'll throw to Brendan for that one.
Oh yeah. They were, and then the one person I knew at Screen Queensland got a different job, so I'm not sure if they still know about us. But some of our members work in SQ Hub, which is a co-working space there. So hopefully they have passed on the word, and hopefully they'll continue to pass on the word. The issue with, I guess, government groups is you make a network, you make a relationship with one person, and then they leave, and then you have to start again. But yeah, but we're starting now. I think now that we have that like formal ongoing community, we kind of have the confidence now, I think, to start, you know, talking to Screen Queensland, talking to other groups, more confidently being like, hey, we exist. Can we get some support, please? Whereas before now, we didn't really have that stable community, I think, for that. Yeah.
Yep. We had another question here is, would you continue running online when everything opens back up? So we have moved on, like we've moved back to doing in-person meetups. In terms of running online, we've we were talking about workshops before, and that's something that we would consider running just online, maybe just like through Zoom, because I think it would be a good, easy thing to run online and a good way to make it open to everyone there.
Something we didn't talk about in 2020, we did run a few Zoom meetups where we just, I think there was like maybe 15 or 20 of us on Zoom, probably had better turnout than in person because no one likes catching buses. And yeah, we just went around and everyone screen shared and showed something they were working on, and that was really nice as well. But you know, not as informal as in real life. Yeah.
Yep. What sorts of things do you do to keep the cozy community vibe going? I would say that definitely the way that we talk about the community, you know, we're Squiggly River, we're playful games, arts, things, definitely helps to sort of set that precedent. Other general things, we've got a code of conduct that makes it pretty clear what is and what is not accepted in our community space. And I think honestly, we've been very lucky that we already have a great community, you know, from who's been here, maybe not from the very beginning, but that has found Squiggly, and they really set the amazing community vibe that we have, and that sort of like keeps it all going. And everyone's very friendly. Every time someone joins our Discord, everyone's like, "Oh my god, welcome!" Everyone's lovely. So I think that helps. Brendan, you have anything to add to that? I don't know.
Just sort of think, I think we're like, I think we've now reached a point where if someone's, I guess, doesn't fit our vibe, for lack of a better word, they're going to realize pretty quickly and realize, all right, this isn't actually for me. And that doesn't just mean necessarily they're toxic, or it could be, but even if they're just like, we've certainly had people show up ready for like a networking event and realize pretty quickly, right, these kids with like fluoro hair can't actually help me get a job, and often you don't see them again, and I think that's fine. They're more than welcome, but they realize that's not the kind of games event we are. And I think the community is so robust now that, yeah, you learn pretty quickly what kind of friendly, what type of inclusive, what type of friendly we are, I think.
Chad is here with the hard questions. Is there any tension with the rest of the Brisbane games industry? I'm going to say no, and I hopefully we sort of established that throughout our talk. We have people who regularly attend Squiggly River who also run other game dev meetups or like help organize those ones as well. And for a while, we were making sure that the Brisbane game dev meetups didn't clash with Squiggly River, so that people could attend both. And yeah, we've got people who attend, you know, Big Dev and Game Dev Brisbane and Squiggly River, so I feel like there's not any tension there.
No, honestly, I'd be surprised. I feel like the majority of them probably don't know we exist still.
That's probably
would be my feeling. But like I don't know, maybe word's gotten out. But yeah, as far as I know, like Brisbane's almost too small to have those tensions almost, I think. But I think it was just so eye-opening. The people who had who had never been part of any of the previous communities that started appearing at our community, which I think just speaks to that need to have those multiple spaces for multiple people, I think was really, really important and valuable.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a lot of people who were like, well, you know, I do software engineering as my day job, but I was like kind of interested in it, and then I saw you over there with a laptop, so now I'm just going to start showing up to this, and it's helped for that more informal crowd of people. Cool. I can't see any more questions in the chat. If you got them, you can chuck them in. Otherwise, I don't know how to end this or the process or any of that.
Yeah.
Cool. That's right. We're going to thank everybody for showing up to our talk today and for all of those great questions. And then I think we throw back to Chad, and that's it.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Just keep waving.
I just wave forever. I think that's it. Yeah. This is not awkward. It's fine.
I'm going to assume.